that in prior, I
Go with
know that
that one.
it, I know that in prior conversations, Bill has talked a lot about, you know, committing, uh, chasing your challenges and doing that. And how do you get to that mindset? What are the little steps in between, right? Because you can say chase your challenge, right? I want to be, I'm going to ride my bike across America. Well, how do you even just like ride around the block? What are those baby steps? And I believe that both of you have a lot of experience and knowledge in that because you've coached Jeff, you've coached people through it. Bill, you've lived through it. So how do you do it?
Yes.
It was interesting that you came up with that one because I was just talking to one of my clients she's very consistent. She stays with the workout. She comes to work out and she tells me every time her favorite part of the workouts when she gets to go home. She absolutely hates it. Um, she's been working out with me for 6 or 8 months now and has never connected with exercise in terms of I want to come. And some people are like that. And I told her, I was laughing. I said, because we're in the middle of doing some workout and she's like, I've got to convince myself to do one more rep. I'm like, that's it. The way it works for me is start once you're working out, it's about 30% mental, 70% physical. When you're when you're to start workout, it's 95 mental, 5% physical. Um, and I'm not sure if you're going small things, um, it took a while after I moved this past year to get back into working out again. And, there was a few things that I want to say about it. One is giving yourself grace to be okay with those days you're like I really if you're just starting out is you don't have to go full all in, you don't have to go 150%. um for me it was just uh I just started walking again. That's where I started I pretty much was moving. That was my exercise, but it wasn't anything that was um consistent. It was, sporadic. You'd move for a day or two and then you sit around and go, Jesus Christ, I don't want to move anymore. And then you'd move again. And I think for me, that getting to that point was just like, okay, I'm just going to go for a walk. And, I always tell people if you just go out and give yourself 5 minutes walking, before you know it, you'll walk 30 minutes. Um, and sometimes you won't. There were times I'm like, I'm going to go out for 10 minutes. And I was just too worn out or just physically and emotionally worn out that I went out and in 10 minutes, I turned around and walked back in. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to go sit down and watch TV. But the thing is, I've tried to teach myself to just say, congratulations, Jeff. And not in a sarcastic way, but in a very genuine way. Say, congratulations, you did something. You did something. That's all you needed to do. And I think a lot is in the world, especially in bariatrics and everything else, is you have to be able to say that was good enough and be okay with good enough. I think there's a mindset of perfection. There's a mindset of, when you see the success of other people on social media, um, you decide that you have to be that way. You have to jump in full because you're asking Richard about little steps. But I think a lot of people feel they have to jump in both feet, um, big everything, or it doesn't work. Um, and for me, it's just being okay with good enough for the day and being okay with whatever it is. And it comes with time. I don't think my client will ever actually love exercise. I mean, I think, like I said, I think she comes to the gym to work out just so she can have the great feeling of not having to see me for a couple of days afterwards. Her motivation is, she's like, I can't wait until I don't have to see you over the weekend. I'm like, that's, If that works for you and keeps you coming, then I'm happy. So, it's sort of embracing the suck a little bit, and just going, okay, hugging the cactus as we've talked about in the past. And I think a lot of it has to do with it has to do with every part of it. It's not just exercise. I would think it's changing your eating habits. It's dealing with uh, relationships. Sometimes you feel like you have to go and make the big conversation in relationships, and sometimes it's a small conversation that's had over the course of a couple of months that can get you to that part. So, you were talking about the psychological part of this, and I think I'm if you want to come kick in, Bill, just go ahead and do it. You know me, I'm just going to continue to rattle on. But there's this psychological aspect I think of that happens to mostly men is this idea that you know uh, I guess I'm coming back to that. How do you get started? How do you stay started? In the psychological aspect, that's even small. That's having small conversations that mean something to you, to the
Hmm.
person in your life that you need to do that to. And it doesn't have to be the big in-depth thing. Um, and I would think this is an extremely vulnerable procedure because you
Uh,
can't hide it, right? You
oh,
can't
that's a
hide a
really good.
you
That's a
can hide a
really
heart
good point.
attack, you could hide cancer, you could hide all these things if you wanted to, and just be very insular and say, no, this is all on me. But this is a very vulnerable thing, and having to figure that out. So, hell, I don't know if I answered your question or I just went on
No,
a
you brought up a couple things. Well, first of all, I want to get the cliches that are running through my head out of my head. It's progress, not perfection. And, you know, don't let perfection stand in the way of good enough, right? Um, okay. Ugh, I've said that. So, but it's real. To your point, you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be a little better and give yourself the grace and the recognition for that. And if it was your effort that got you to a little better, pat yourself on the back, right?
right. And I want to interrupt and just say sometimes you're not a little better. Sometimes you go to the gym and you're a little worse. And because there are days when you're just not better.
Oh,
But that doesn't mean you're always going to be, because sometimes you're on. You have your gym days where you go and you're like, I'm killing it today. I'm pushing bigger weights. I'm running faster. And then there's days you walk in and you're like, I can't even lift half the weight that I typically lift. And sometimes I guess what I'm getting at is you're right. I think over the course of a long period of time, the line should go up.
the
But sometimes
trajectory.
but sometimes in the short period, the line goes down. But that doesn't mean it's not going to go back up again.
Consider the stock
So
market, right? On a daily basis, what are you doing? But the trend
Yeah.
is now, I have to say, I know Bill is chomping to jump in on this. And so, and I'm hoping that we have the best for last with Bill because Bill, you're an amazing human, and you've overcome a lot of these things. So please, what's your experience?
I think that I sometimes, and my voice is very bad today, so I apologize up front. The idea of plateaus and specifically the idea of being surprised by a plateau is a little bit foreign to me because the math is very clear. Sustained calorie deficit leads to weight loss. And as long as we're not looking at too small of a window of time, over time, you would, if you have a maintained calorie deficit, you will keep losing weight. Maybe Richard faster than Jeff, maybe Bill slower than someone else because of our metabolic rate. But it, I'm always amazed when people say, I was surprised at my plateau. Um, because I really challenge anybody to say, to honestly be able to say, I haven't done anything different. I mean, true, a day, water weight, all that. But if you're in this game for keeps, that's already part of your thinking, or it should be, knowing that my body kind of sloshes back and forth a little bit in this range as it goes down. If it stops going down, I've stopped doing something that I had done before. So when people say, I don't know how to get out of this, I just really want to say, yeah, you do. The same way you got to that point,
Mm.
watching how you eat and what you're doing, how you move, and all the parts of your weight loss surgery lifestyle.
Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you know what? You just brought up an amazingly beautiful point, right? It's like, what did I do to get here? What were my happy moments? What were the successes? And maybe our plateaus are a little bit out of laziness or boredom, right? Where we've stopped trying to achieve because initially we had that.
And keep in mind, the focus is always on the weight, the body part, but there's mental and spiritual too. You may be doing the exact same things you were doing body wise, but your mental game, your spiritual game is off for whatever reason, and it's pulling you down. So, if anything, when people say, I'm in a plateau, I don't know what to do, my go back, start from the beginning. Why am I doing this? What are my goals? What's the vision I have for myself? Am I role playing what I want to actually live? Am I visualizing the outcome I want? Oops, I forgot about all that. Well, congratulations. You know exactly what to do. And
Like,
like we just said, you probably did all of that to get from where you were to where you got to this point where suddenly a plateau. Well, you know what to do. And I think that the whole idea of the idea that consistency is more important than the motivation because consistency ultimately produces momentum rather. And momentum is the kind of thing that pulls you along when you really don't want to, when you'd rather not and all that. Um, but the whole idea of, I think I used an example like this before, but gee, I'm just not motivated to go work out. Well, I have had three babies in my life. I was never motivated to change their diaper, never once motivated. But I did because you had to, because it's a fact of life, because it's the best way to live a life that's going to make my wife, my kids, and myself happy. All right, all of that. Me wanting to do it isn't even in the equation. It's doing what's necessary for the greater goal. My greater goal, raise my son, or exercise my body, or improve my mental or spiritual foundation, then go pursue those things. Anyway, that's what I was aching to say. So
So I believe that we're all familiar with, that the SMART goals. And I'm also a health coach in another part of my life. I do one-on-one health coaching with people with chronic comorbidities, COPD, liver disease, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and one of the things that we do in that program is we develop SMART goals. And we are attached to these patients for 6 months at a time. And there were a lot of coaches who were making like a 6 month goal. So 6 months from now, you want 6 months from now. Well, we talk about these little achievements, right? And recognizing that, yeah, maybe someday it's going to be not so much, but other days it's going to be really big. Um, as much as as much as I just hate SMART goals because I just the whole thing, they're so effective, right? And it's exactly what you're saying, Jeff. It's what you're saying. It's just like get to tomorrow, go for a walk tomorrow, and do it, and then suddenly you like 15 minutes tomorrow turns into 30 minutes, and doing these things, that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, like tomorrow is when I'm going to do it. It's so important that we have small goals all the time, right? because if when I weighed 300 pounds, I wanted to weigh 170, and I'm kind of locked in at around 185 right now, but I don't see it as a failure because my muscle mass is better. So my waist is smaller, my shirts fit better, just all of those things, but I'm still the same weight because what I've done is I've lost the fat, I've lost the other things, and I've put on muscle. And so Jeff, I wonder in your experience, is that something that you actually encourage people to attempt to recognize?
That change in shape, that change in weight.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Bill made a statement. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
You
you're
went
good
out
now.
for a second, but
Okay, yeah, I think my headphones just dropped out.
Hang on a second. Um, so Bill made a statement, I think, about the plateau is that go back and sort of look at where you were, right? And
Hmm.
look at your goals again. But I think there's another aspect of that is where is your uh look at your goals and you may not want that goal anymore. That
right.
may be the reason you plateaued, right?
Oh, that's a
So
great, yeah.
you may have decided early on, I want to do X, and then you've gotten close to it, and you're like, oh God, I don't want to do X, so you just started plateauing. So just because you've not doing your goal, maybe you need a new goal. You may need a Richard in your life to help you smart goal it out. So, but that's an aspect of a plateau is that your life has changed or your goals have changed because of it. Um, yeah, in terms of the other aspect, weight over size is huge. I think for most people, um, I always ask questions like, how do you feel about moving? These are questions you can ask yourself. If your weight hasn't gone down, is to ask yourself like, how are you moving? Is it easier to move? Can you now pull the bag of dog food out of the car without help from your spouse? Is getting in and out of a bathtub easier, all the non-scale victories. But I think a lot of that is important. And I think it's also important if you're in a relationship with somebody is to, I don't know, I'm just spitballing and thinking about this as I talk, is how is it that you because sometimes you can't see it yourself. Sometimes you need
Right.
somebody else to see it. And, maybe it's one of those things is where you ask that person that you feel kind of vulnerable with, that you can feel safely vulnerable with. It's like, I'd love for you to point out those things to me from time to time. Some people like it. Some people go for that. Some people like, don't tell me that stuff. But, I think it doesn't always have to be on you. You can, if you have someone in your life you trust and you love, that you can ask them to do that same thing. Just so it's sort of a reality check back to what you did. Because, and the other aspect is you don't have someone like that. You always have a journal and a pencil that you can write this stuff down with. That's just as
Great
important,
point.
right?
Great
So
point.
I always tell people to write stuff down, like how'd you feel after you climbed those stairs, and then 6 months from now, go back and look at that book after you climbed those stairs, and actually you'll probably laugh at yourself for going, oh my God, I can't believe that I used to go up 2 flights of stairs and have to stop for 20 minutes, and now I go up 5 flights of stairs and just slightly out of breath. So it's little things I don't think people put in their day to keep the motivation. If I'm not even going to use motivation because they'll keep the momentum going. And I think those are huge. I think if you're not looking back a little bit, engaging where you were to where you are,
Yes.
um, you can completely miss the successes that you've had.
Ah, that is so. I mean, and that's like a really profound statement in terms
Exactly.
of if I'm trying to get to here, right? I'm having successes the whole way along,
Mhm.
but I feel like a failure until I get to here, right? That if my goal is so far out there, like I want to lose 20 pounds, well, recognizing that you've lost one or two is it's so important because those are your successes that are going to keep your momentum, Bill, keep your momentum going forward. And it's just recognizing those. It's really powerful. That's a profound statement.
I think it's also along the ways it can even be, it's like those bite-sized things. It's instead of, I ate dinner and my brain said I wanted a piece of toast, but my body said, you don't need anything else to eat. You've eaten plenty. And the success is, okay, so I didn't have a piece of toast. Instead, I went and had uh, herbal tea or decaf coffee or a slice of an apple if you really wanted to eat something. But it's even those small things that do it too. And I don't think people give those enough. They're powerful in terms of cumulative effects, but they're powerful in terms of motivation and momentum. And I don't think people give them enough credence and enough power. They're like, whatever. So I did that. I'm like, no, I think when my clients tell me stuff like that, I'm more excited than they are. When they say, you know what? I went to the Super Bowl party and I didn't have all the chips and guac. Instead I ate before I went and I felt fine. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. They look at it like, what? That's just, whatever. I was like, no, you should celebrate stuff like that. You really should celebrate stuff like that.
Acknowledge it, right? And so
Yeah.
Bill, I have a question for you. Talking about plateaus and how do we get over those? And I get it. You are an insanely internally motivated person. How do you engage your partner? How do you engage your partner to get over those plateaus?
Um, you mean how do I incorporate my wife into the
Yes.
process?
Yes.
Um, you know, I that's kind of a stumper for me.
Yeah.
Because she was there right from the get-go. I mean, I consulted a couple of people that had weight loss surgery from a technical and a process point of view. But the only person that I consulted with on is this right for me? Should I do this? Are we willing to take on the responsibility that this process is going to ask for? Only one I talked to was her.
Mm.
And she just from get-go was, if you think this is right for you, I want to see you do things that'll change your lifestyle, your life the way that you want it to. So if this is your decision, I'm behind you. And um, she just supported me all the way. Now, she also is referred to as Dr. Colleen a lot because she's diagnosed several of my issues or pains or, subsequent mild um, um, problems, that happened after surgery and stuff. But um, no, gave me great advice, takes care of me well. Then when I went through the throat issue with the surgery
Yeah.
in my neck, um, in a lot of ways I started over and how to eat and do a lot of basic body things. And she was there to help me on all that. So I I wouldn't want to even try to imagine doing it without her.
Oh, oof. Mm.
And probably the reason I didn't really, well, I won't say that. I'll say um, when I couldn't get from a group support group because I
Sure.
wasn't at where one was, I got from my group support of one, but it was so good that it was sufficient for a room full of people.
Wow. 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 That's oof. I'm getting weepy. Um, it's an amazing statement that when you said I wouldn't have done it without her. And I think for all of us who go through this bariatric process because the bariatric journey, we've got to have that one person, at least one. We've got to have that support that you're going to be all right. It's going to be okay. And I'm looking out for you, who doesn't pressure you into, well, why don't you eat half a pizza, right? And, just, I mean, that's a silly example, but it's so important. And like you, my partner is amazing. And she actually, this is kind of funny. So she actually eats the same portions that I do. Now, I've had a Roux-en-Y bypass, right? So I've got a 4-ounce pouch. She eats the same portions that I do. And since I met her almost a year ago, she's lost almost like 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And she feels better than she's ever felt. And so, Jeff, like you were mentioning a minute ago, can you get the dog food out of the car unassisted? Do you feel better when you move? Those type of things. She's going to check yes in all of those boxes. And it's because we found our support. And now, so like back to that plateau thing, right? So you run into a plateau and whatever it is, right? I want to lift more weight. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to do this thing. Without that, like immediate support, that person who you can reach out and hold their hand. I don't know how I would accomplish it, right? Because I couldn't do it on my own. And even for somebody like you, Bill, who, you're insanely internally motivated. You still have to find that support to get over those plateaus.
Oh yeah, I don't care what kind of a tire you are, you have a spout, and if the air is released, you're gonna blow. And that's the way it is, you can have a capacity to hold a lot in. But that's great. And other people maybe don't have that same capacity. But when it comes time to release and be supported, it's all the same. It's all the same. And
So
yeah, I'd need that, definitely.
Yeah.
what would you ask of your partner? How would you, I guess I'm asking this for somebody else. How would you ask your partner to support you if you were just new to this? Does that make sense? So there's people that are like, I'm
Mhm.
going to do this. I'll support you. It's sort of like, to me, it's like, well, how does that um, ask look like? What has been the biggest help for you in terms of the support you've gotten from your spouse or from uh, your significant other in whatever way? Um, and is it sort of like I just need someone who I can vent to? Is like the best part about this was the fact that they helped cook dinners for me. Was it that they would eat the same amount that I would? Is there something about it like um, those supports that seem to, when you look back, you like going, because they were doing these things, it really helped me the most.
So I'll jump in.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So like when I feel like I'm not achieving my exercise goals, my movement goals, um, I'll tell Mary, my partner, I'll tell her, look, I'm not doing this. Can you do it? Because if I see her doing it, I would feel guilty because I just asked her to do it. And so it gets me on the game. If she sees that we're eating the wrong things, those types of things, but just to be not naggy, but mindful. Okay. And there's a huge difference there. Remindful is this was your goal that you told me you wanted. And just remember your goal as opposed to, don't eat those chips because, so it's remindful. And I find that my partner is most helpful when she's remindful. And sometimes that remindfulness, that thing, because now she's participating in my goals, right? And sometimes that remindfulness is her actually doing it and then me saying, oh my gosh, I asked her to do this and now I'm not, right? So at least that's my experience. And Bill, I know you've got experience.
I love the idea of mindful. I like
Yeah.
that. As I said before, in my past I'm not a person that likes to be told what to do, but I love to be taught. And so, especially if you remind me one of my own lessons that I teach, um, I I find that I don't need as much support moment to moment, day to day, that kind of thing. I'm more what I was referring to before is when I get that I'm about to blow moment, when I just and it may be a male thing. You see that a lot, holding it in, holding it in, holding it in. I'll handle it. I'm fine. No problem. And then that moment comes when it says bam. And I'm sure I, made mistakes, goofed up, failed everything, a loser, whatever it is. And that's when my wife grabs me and, does brings me back to reality and says no, because, the things she tells me and the way she does it and gets me over those moments. And and that's what I want. That's what I need. I don't want somebody moment to moment holding my hand through this process. That's not me. Somebody else, like that, good. Find it, use it, more power to you. But um, and we've been married for 41 years tomorrow.
Wow. Wow.
So
Hey, congratulations.
um, yeah, 42 years. Sorry, my son's 41 today. Um,
Wow. Happy birthday to him.
yeah, thank you.
Well done, Dad.
And when you've been married that long, you've figured a few things out, so it's she knows she's not gonna um control my every movement, and I'm gonna make mistakes, and sometimes I'm gonna make more of them if you point them out to me just out of spite or whatever. So she knows how to manage me, and and I know how to let her at times, and if I don't, then I learned a new lesson and I move on.
You know, I think it's interesting you said that. I was going to go back. I think it's what you're saying about being managed. And I think Richard and Bill have sort of um, stated you understand how you need support, right?
Yeah.
Bill needs it on the big stuff. Richard, you
Oh,
need it in sort of like I need it here and here along the way, sort of punctuated with I think I'm slowing down. You need to do this to help me out, kind of thing. But I wonder how many people don't even have a clue as to how they need to be managed. I think some people feel how they grow up, they resent being managed in any way whatsoever. Um, and I think that's a detriment to their own health and their own, because everybody needs to be managed in some way. So I think for a lot of people, it's just, I think when you come back to this journey, the part that I've never thought about until right now is part of the psychological aspect of asking yourself or working with somebody to ask yourself, how is it that I want to be managed? That's not
oh,
offensive to me. That's not going to drive me to an anger position. Like how is it? This is kind of what this goes back to the original question is like, how is it that I want to ask my support? Like, I need support and this is how I want it. And I don't think a lot of people know how to do that. And I think what you
wow.
guys just told me said a lot. Is sort of like, this is how I want to be managed. Some people want it every day. Some people like just give it to me when I really need it, and that's to be a couple times a month.
So that's going to be our next podcast is how do I want to be managed?
No, I want to be managed. I think it's yeah, but I think it's an important aspect I never really thought about until we started talking about this. Is that and
Yeah.
this isn't even a bariatric thing. This is just a life thing. As you get older and you get people in your life, and as you get older, you get less people in your life, right?
Mm.
So you start out, as a preschooler, everybody's your friend, and by the time you're 50 or 60, you have three or four really good friends, and that's about it. And I think at that point in time, you need to be able to tell those people this is how I want to be managed. This is how I need to be motivated. This is how, don't do this. This will just drive me away from you. Please do this. This will drive me closer to you. And I don't think people think about it. And I'm talking a lot because I'm processing it in my head as we go through this, because that's probably a process I need to learn more about too. I've been single for so long. I don't know how to tell somebody how to manage me, right? It's sort of like I just know what I'm needing to
Right,
do.
right.
So, um, So, and I think it's more difficult is when you go into a support group and they're all new people and they're as strangers slowly becoming not strangers if you stay with it, is how do you want to approach a support group, and how do you want to, ask people for help, and how do you want to do it in a way that doesn't feel condescending or stupid to you? I don't have answers to this. This is just me babbling.
Wow, that is so managing plateaus. We clearly need to have help. We've got to pull in our support group. We've got to, you know, and how do you get there, right? So it's so complex. How do I want to be managed? How do I recognize a plateau? Am I willing to commit to getting over it? I mean, those are huge things.
They're huge things,
Um,
but need to take small steps to get to them, right?
Otherwise, it's overwhelming. Yes. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
And
simply aren't going to be able to do it. And that's what's really interesting. I think that when we get to the plateaus, like we're looking so far down the road, like I want to lose 20 more pounds, that we lose sight of just losing one more pound. We only think like I've got to lose 20, I've got to lose 20, as opposed to just one more pound, one more pound, one pound. And if I do that 20 times, good on me. Right. But we don't give ourselves the grace and the credit and the acknowledgement of that. Yeah, plateaus are difficult. They're tough. And they're happening all the time. I mean, I'm only 3 years out and I feel like I've hit a couple and I've overcome them. Or I said, well, wait a minute, maybe that goal was wrong. Right. Uh, maybe that shouldn't have been, maybe 20 pounds shouldn't have been my goal. Maybe my waist size should have been my goal. So I went from a 46 to a 32. And I I went from 36-ish, 34 to 32. I still weigh the same amount, but my body shape is different. And so I shouldn't, for me, I had to change my focus from being 170 to being able to fit into these pants. And it turns out that at 190, I can fit into those pants because the weight has shifted in terms
right.
of muscle mass. So it's really
Yeah,
cool.
and the effort that it would take to change that and go to 170 and still wear the same pants isn't worth it as it impacts your lifestyle. You
Correct.
are happy, you are satisfied, you are content. That's the definition of best weight by Dr. Sharma. The best weight you can live at while simultaneously living your best life. I bastardized that a little bit, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
And, the number, that's also a reason, a way of looking around all this stuff is once you set your goal to live a certain lifestyle, and that's what you're living toward, the result of that lifestyle is your goal anyway.
Great point.
So I don't have to focus on the number. I have to focus on what did, I mean, think of any good athlete. Simone Biles, best gymnast in the world. What does she do every day? She doesn't say, I'm scoring a 10. She says, I'm going to do these things that enable a person to eventually be a gymnast that can get a 10. Same thing here. I'm going
Great
to live
point.
my life, eat, move in a way that gets naturally leads itself to a fit, trim life. And whatever that number is, I'm happy.
That's a really great point, Bill. And this this will probably even be in another podcast. It's those non-scale victories,
Exactly.
right? Um, for so many, especially early on bariatric patients, right? It's all about the scale.
Of course it is.
It's all about standing on that thing and what do I weigh? What do I weigh? How much, we lose sight of the significance of our non-scale victories. And that's a really good point. Yeah, we got to bring that back up.
Yeah. Like I said, it's sort of writing those down, right? Writing down the non-scale victory. understanding where you were a year ago to where you are today. So
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
that's great. Um, I think we have enlightened people for a while now with this podcast.
If they're still here.
It's still here. Yeah. Anything in closing you want to say before we head out?
Just thank you guys for being here. I yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And Bill, you made me weepy.
Well, well, thank you for all the kind words you said. No, my final words would be just trust yourself, trust the process, see it through. Don't give up. You got it.
Yeah. I couldn't say it better myself. So yeah, thanks everybody. And